Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Fig House. Pull up a chair, join us. We're gonna be talking about 2020 pandemic and everything in between. So we're gonna share with you guys some things that for us in this last year is things that we faced, we've talked about or seen, and we just want to kind of invite you guys to the table to join this conversation. So wherever you're at, pull up a snack, pull up something to drink. We already got our waters, but pull up something that you can join us at the table to have this convo. So. 2020.
What
How
a
are you
year.
guys feeling? Pandemic, quarantine, all
Quite a
about it.
topic.
It is quite a topic. How are you guys
It
feeling
is.
about that? How'd you guys feel in this last year?
I think many different things. I don't think it's one feeling. I think just multiple different things. But
Yeah.
I mean, we're here now, and I think that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
What about in that process that you guys felt that? What are some wins that you guys can talk about at least? Let's start there. What are some wins that you guys, looking back on this year, you're like, man, this was me last year. This is me now. What are some things that you guys feel was something you guys can tangibly walk away with, or just feel like, yo, man, like this was cool. Like it really did. I grew in this area. This helped me out, or this was something I didn't notice. Now I see it. What's something you guys would like to share on that?
That's a very intricate
Bro,
question.
you say another interesting question.
Interesting question. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it just gave us a lot more of a chance to just kind of, find out more about ourselves and about each other than basically really any other time in the previous years.
Do you think there's something about having to sit in a place that's kind of confined, or sit in a place where you're kind of removing yourself from things? And I say that because during, there was quarantine, right? So weren't allowed to go out, weren't allowed to really visit places that we usually went, which as a family, we'd go to the park, we'd go to theme parks, we'd go to different places, people's houses, have people over. So I think when you removed a lot of that, what did you guys feel? Like, what did you guys see? Or as you were sharing that point, like, what were some things that, not distractions, but maybe some things that you were like, yo, man, like when I took this back, like it really allowed me to see this side, or allowed me to see this part. I know we spent more time as a family, which, we're used to doing already, but what were some things in that you guys kind of individually or personally saw that, maybe can help someone else, or someone else can relate to and hear that and be like, yo, man, that was kind of me during that time?
Yeah. I think for me, it took a lot of the distractions away. So it was a lot of just really not doing much, which I think was great because we were always busy, always doing stuff, always running around. So I think us being close as a family brought us closer, just having different conversations and more like deeper conversations of what we're really feeling and going through, because we only had each other to talk to pretty much, and to be around.
Yeah, I think it's crazy now that I'm thinking back. Like, it's just like you remember all of those jokes people would say on like 2020 is like 2020 vision, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy how much of a year that was focusing or refocusing and
Yeah.
literally removed all of our distractions because we
Yeah.
were just stuck at home, and people were making jokes like, "Oh, I'm gonna have that 2020 vision. I could see." It's
Yeah.
like, no, it was that was a refocusing of all
Yeah.
the stuff of all the distractions that were in our lives. It
Yeah.
was just like reordering. Yeah.
And I think, you were talking about like the busyness, right? And I think, we love community, we love people. So it's not like a bad thing. Sometimes when you correlate the word distractions, you're usually looked upon as something that's like a negative thing, something that has a lot of, like you're distracted during a race means that you saw something and it pulled your vision away from what you were doing. So you lost your alignment, you lost your focus. Distractions weren't necessarily that heavy. It was just stuff hanging out with people, going places. But even in being forced to like scale that back to not going anywhere, to not being able to have people over, it does help kind of narrow that, I think, window. You're talking about vision, narrowing that focus, right? It's like, okay, so some of these things, maybe I was focused on going out a lot, right? Like if you're somebody like going out a lot, like, man, I realized I used to go out every night. Like now I can't go out every night, right? Or I used to go to the park, or I was always at someone's house. Now you're not. And I think that like really shrunk it, right? To like, oh snap, like I gotta stay home, or I'm at home, or the people in my house are the only people I get to talk to for these next, right? However much time it was, we didn't even know at that point.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool to kind of hear you guys share that, because you don't realize that maybe some of these things aren't negative distractions, but they are sometimes things that can take priority in your life that you hadn't even thought were taking priority, right? Some things of like going out all the time, maybe not spending as much time with my family, maybe not spending as much time with my spouse, or maybe not as focused on things. So what you guys are talking about, like it's really real. And a lot of people saw that, right? Like you're talking about these jokes that people are like 2020 vision, but for some people it's like, yo, 2020 fixed my sight. Like it hurt, but it allowed me to see some things that I probably wouldn't have seen had this not happened.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's something that is like, it's corrected some of my vision.
Well, yeah, it even brings even to like when Dave went to the optometrist and he's like, he didn't even know that he couldn't even see, but he goes to the optometrist and he's like, wow, I really couldn't see. The doctor's like, how do you live most of your life not knowing that you can't see?
Yeah.
And it's just like,
that is so
it's
true.
just like, you couldn't see this whole time. And it's like,
I'm
But
still
he
shocked
didn't-
about that.
Yeah.
But he didn't, like, you didn't notice it.
I wasn't
because you were
wasn't
used to-
suffering because of it. So I was kind of ignorant to the fact that my life,
Jeez.
my vision could have been better.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because that's what you were used to. Like, that's what you knew.
No, even that point. I mean, like you guys are talking about subjects that are like way deep.
Yeah.
These are like sermon messages, to be honest, because what you're talking about is he hadn't even noticed that there was a need for him to correct his vision, right? So when you guys went to the optometrist, right, you guys are like, oh, we should probably go get checked because I'm getting headaches, kind of seeing stuff. Sarah really wanted glasses. Didn't end up needing them, but she likes them.
Yeah.
And you guys were like, no, we're good. Dave was like, nah, I'm good. And he's the one that needed glasses
The most. Yeah.
So I think that point, man, is so deep because you're talking about needing a correction of my sight and not knowing that I need it.
I feel like just because I was able to live my life kind of normally, even though I couldn't really see as clearly as I could have, it made it easier to ignore the fact that my vision wasn't perfect. So I think, just because there was no real negative consequence of not being able to see perfectly, it was easier to just move on and not really notice that it was a problem.
Yeah, that was the only thing you ever knew.
Yeah.
So you couldn't compare it to anything else. Be like, oh, that's how it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a whole nother point for even pandemic and everything we've gone through, right? The idea that it wasn't until you had an opportunity to be forced into comparing something, not knowing that we're living a certain way, right? So obviously it's not to remove the tragedy of everything that people have experienced through being sick. We ourselves were sick. We didn't even know about it, right? So I think all those things, but the idea that in that time frame, we realized something that we hadn't noticed because we were never in a place to compare it to something. So I think that's also a great point of what you guys are bringing up. So even ourselves, right, as a family, we're hanging out, we're doing things, and it's like, yo, like, maybe there were some things that we needed to slow down from or like find other methods of spending time together. And so I think that it definitely is it was a slowing down and a clearing of vision, but slowing down.
Yeah.
When anything, you've talked about that, you've literally felt like, I need to take a seat. I need to take it in, which I think is such a great point.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it, I think for me, felt... Sorry, I get emotional. I think for me, it felt a lot when my dad passed away and I was going through that grief and I felt just alone and like isolated, and I kept getting like little glimpse of that through this pandemic. Like, this is what we're all going through. Like, we're losing so much. Just people losing jobs, just different things, So everyone lost so much during this last year. And I think that's what I kept feeling a lot of. Just that same feeling, that same the same thing that I felt, you know? And yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot in that, right? Like, I think we're talking about loss. We're talking about people that have lost family members, right? People that lost jobs, that lost their businesses, that lost their homes. They've lost so many things during this time. So I think even in understanding how to lose, right? I remember being in sports, playing soccer, right? And you're talking about this idea of like, you're a sore loser, right? Like if you lost the game, which I was competitive in soccer,
Yeah.
if I'd lose, I'd be mad. Be mad at myself, be mad at my team, be like, yo, what are we doing? Right? But I think the idea that it's like you're a sore loser, right? Because you don't know how to lose. But I think in the idea of something even deeper, so much more painful, and the processes of not knowing how to process loss, right? So I think those were a lot of growth for me, is how to understand loss, how to look back on myself and maybe things that I had lost that I hadn't looked at, right? And how did I process through that? Maybe I didn't. I just skipped over it, right? Kind of like a video game when you're skipping a level and just trying to get to the next level and you skip it, having to revisit some of that. So I think there's so much of what you're sharing is so important that we processed. I think for us that was like a big thing, learning how to do that as a family, because I think, I've heard people say before, I've never felt so lonely in a room full of people. But you can be in a family, you can be in a home, you could be surrounded by people and still have these moments of loneliness, right? So I think that was a lot of things that we were kind of looking at, experiencing during this time. So yeah, that was good.
It was a crazy year, I think, 2020.
I mean,
We learned a lot.
It's been a little bit over
Yeah.
a year, right? So we're like halfway
Yeah.
in April right now.
Almost
right?
2. Yeah.
Almost,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a journey, a mission for sure. We're here on the other side of that, learning how to walk this out. What are some takeaways, though? You got to give me some takeaways, something that you guys were like, man, like,
Oh, my foot fell asleep.
I took, I took this away, and this is something that I've learned, I've grown, and I'm walking different because of it. What do you guys think?
I think that, well, first, if you didn't walk away with anything, I think that you missed the whole idea of quarantine. Like, I feel like a lot of people see this as something like ungodly, something that was just a tragedy. And even though it had tragedy in it, I think it was mostly a blessing, just because it was able to just bring people together as a whole. Like, the whole world's going through this. It's not like individual. I mean, some people are struggling more than others, but I think mostly everybody's going through the same mental process of what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think for me, probably just community. I think I started to realize that that's what I was depending on. That was something that that I was just putting over everything. Like, as soon as that was gone, it felt like every day melded together. Like, I couldn't tell which day was which. And it was just like, as soon as we were able to go out again, it's like, I would take that chance, So it's just, I think for me, community was one of the biggest things that I lost.
Lost and realized you were depending on it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Altogether,
So
yeah.
I think, man, like, I think even in that, right? Like, you're talking about something that you didn't realize how much you depended on community,
Yeah.
but then realizing that you missed it so much. But it's interesting too, to your point, that like you can look at the day of the week and realize the day of the week based on the community of that day.
Right. Yeah.
So for us, going to church was a
Sunday. Yeah.
right, or a midweek, right? So we're realizing that we can identify the day of the week by the community in which we hung out with or the people that we spent the time with. Once you remove that, it's like I've lost the idea of what day of the week it is,
Yeah.
or where we're going or what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that, man, is like, I think originally it should all be on us. I should know what day of the week it is for me. I should wake up, yo, today's Tuesday, today's Wednesday, and not have it dependent on the fact that I'm doing something. So even soccer, you guys had practice twice a week, right? So you're like, oh, it's Tuesday, soccer practice. Oh, Thursday, soccer practice. You know what I mean? So I think identifying a day for the day that it is and not necessarily what's attached to it. So I think that's also something that can help us even moving forward, man, like really realizing the value of every day. That's what you're talking about, is the value of every day, the value of who you are, not necessarily who you're with or what you're doing. So that absolutely can speak to anyone. Teaches me constantly to be reminded of that. What do you think?
I think I agree with Matt, like the community aspect of it. Because before quarantine, we would hang out with a lot of people, but when quarantine started, we kind of just had to stay home, you know? So.
Yeah, that's good. What about you guys?
I think for me, the thing that I kind of got from quarantine was just kind of being more present and aware. Because like you said, you know, we lost a lot of things. We lost the ability to go out, to hang out with friends at a close capacity, and like, you know, going to each other's houses. Like, you know, that's something that we all lost. And a lot of the times we don't really know what we stand to lose. So when it does, it kind of sideswipes us. We don't know how to react, what to think, and really how to feel about it. I think just being aware of what you have to lose will just allow you to be able to, like, you know, appreciate it more, take more time to, you know, like, feel good about what you're doing throughout the day, spending time with family, you know, calling friends, letting them know that, you know, you're still with them, you know, we're going to get through it together, and just stuff like that, because I feel like loss is something that kind of takes everyone by surprise.
Yeah.
And when it does, it impacts them, like, you know, more greatly. It leaves more of a mark, leaves more of pain behind, especially with like losing family members or losing friends. It leaves a mark, and it's really impactful for the person who loses it. And then after that, they don't know how to react, they don't know how to deal with it, and don't really know where to go from there. So I think just spending your time more carefully and just doing what you need to do by the end of the day will help you deal with anything else that, if you may lose something or lose someone, you know, it'll help you along the way.
Yeah.
Mom. That was
That's
so
so
good.
Whoa.
Whoa. David, the pastor.
That was so good.
Yeah, so, I mean, 2020 has been an interesting year, right? So we had an interesting rides, kind of that roller coaster you got on. You didn't want to get off, or you did want to get off, and it's like, this is taking way longer than I thought it would take, which is me like on Space Mountain. But I think, you know, now here we are a year later, a little bit over a year later, right? And we get to see things differently, and we get to walk out as a family something different. So we hope you guys had a great time having this conversation today. Pulled up that chair, had that snack. But we appreciate you guys joining us. Definitely subscribe or jump on to our The Fig House at YouTube. We also have The Fig House, the family podcast, so you'll be able to hear it on many platforms coming soon. But we thank you guys for your time. Hopefully you guys join us next week, where we have a whole nother episode, and you get to pull up a chair and join us at the table. So next week, you never know what we might talk about. You never know what we might be doing. So see you guys. Bye, guys.
Bye.